So, if you look at the screen, one of my favorite people who would probably enjoy this message most is with the ladies. So she told me I had to get everybody on their feet to start my sermon because she saw the title of it and we got to do jumping jacks together. Because Crystal said she's going to be watching the live stream and she wanted to see us all doing jumping jacks. Nobody's down for this? Oh, you ready? Alright, we're ready. Yeah. I think I might put a hole in this stage if I start doing jumping jacks on it. So.
Do it.
Nobody asked you, Isaiah. Alright. So, this morning we're going to continue through Philippians Chapter 2. We're going to go to verse 12. And Paul talks a lot about working out our spiritual life right here. And that's where the title of my sermon comes from. And you know, we go through these battles in our life and these ups and downs. And, you know, Keith kind of talked about it a little bit this morning in his call to worship. The ups and downs, the worry, and trying to fight a multi-front war, you know, between fighting off the spiritual war and the wars in our life. And it's the fear of almost any military power having to fight a war on multiple fronts. You know, that used to be more so of a fear in older times. It used to be like the number one fear because of manpower. But now that we fly through the air and do all that stuff, it's not as big of a fear, but it's still one that we don't want to have to worry about. We don't want to have to worry about consuming ourselves on multiple fronts. In our spiritual life, just as Keith talked about, is no different. We shouldn't have the fear and the worry of fighting a battle on multiple fronts. That's something that nobody wants. And it's a workout for our spirit. It's a workout for things that we don't really have control of sometimes. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. You know, as we have read through Philippians, we have seen Paul's encouragement of the church in Philippi. We have seen how he's encouraged by the way that they continue to do good. They continue to grow their spirit. They continue to prosper in the absence of Paul. And Paul has said time and time again to them that this makes him excited. This makes him happy because he knows that they are living according to what he has taught them. That they are using his life as an example to others. And that excites Paul. And so as we get started this morning, I want to jump in to Philippians chapter 2, starting with verse 12. It says, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me." Philippians, and Paul's just an overwhelming joy with the way these people are. But he starts off and he says, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence." He talks about the first step of this whole spiritual journey that he goes on with them right here through these 6-7 verses. He starts it with obedience. And I think that's where all of us start our journey with God. It all starts with obedience. And obedience is never a popular topic. It's never a popular topic in humans at all. I mean, especially within teenagers. But the unpopularness of obedience doesn't start at age 13. Okay? And it doesn't just rule in the 13-year-old, in the teenager. Obedience is something we all struggle with. Obedience is something that we all find ourselves fighting time and time again. Obedience is the thing that we resist in our life, especially when it comes to our spiritual walk. I was just having this talk with somebody the other day. We were talking about, God and who God is, and the fact that we, as Gentiles, are still not God's chosen people. That we are still far from being God's chosen people. That's still the Jewish nation, and it will always be the Jewish nation. But we find this deal of obedience funny, whether you're in the Gentile or the Jewish nation of God. Because we like to flip through Scripture and go, well, that's easy to obey, that's easy to obey. I'll do this, and well, let's see if we can twist this part because it's a little tough. No, when Paul says about the Old Testament law, he says, you're either following the law or you're not following the law. And that's tough. It was tough when that was the law and the standard. If you're a non-Messianic Jew in today's world, that's the law you live by. That's a tough law to follow still. We could talk about some of the crazy things that law holds. Just absurdities that you wouldn't be able to follow today. Because of the obedience factor and love between a man and a wife. There would be a week out of a month, guys, where you couldn't even hold your wife's hand if you followed the Old Testament law. Okay? You couldn't give her a hug. You couldn't eat the food she cooked for you. Right? How many men in here that are married would want to go 1 week a month and be told, okay, it's all on you. I'm out. But that's what obedience would make you do according to the Old Testament law. So obedience has been an unpopular topic for centuries. Okay? It's not anything new. Obedience is tough. And that's where Paul started with them. He said, as you have always obeyed, not just when I'm there, but even more in my absence. Continue to obey. That obedience is at the heart of the gospel. We are saying when we're obedient that we want God's will to be done, not ours. And sometimes, as we talked about with lordship last year and calling Jesus Lord, to sometimes tell God, to all the time tell God, I want your will to be done, not mine. I want to surrender my design to you. All the time. That's the heart of the gospel. And guys, sometimes God's will for us is not anywhere close to what we want. Because if God's will and my will lined up, I will be honest, I love Macksville, but I would probably be in some great big mansion next to the lake, doing church right on the beach every Sunday. Okay? And that'd be my idea, that'd be my will. Can I have it? No, God's got other plans for me, and I'm okay with that. And we all have to be. When we surrender in obedience to the gospel, to the message what Christ brought us. No question. The message that Christ gave us. We find obedience. And we find a complete surrender to the will of God. And that's the heart of the gospel. And so that's why this obedience becomes part of this Christian or this spiritual workout, as we say. Because we have to make a point to be obedient. There are parts of our life that it becomes second nature to be obedient. Okay? I'm almost 32 years old, and I think I have this honor thy father and mother thing down. Okay? It's almost second nature to me to be respectful to my mother now. But when I was 15, 16, 17, early 20s even, I had to work really hard at being respectful to my mother. For one, my mom's lifestyle and my lifestyle didn't line up. And so I judged her for it. I criticized her for it. I called her out on it. And maybe the calling out on it, a whole different conversation, can still be considered respectful if I did it in a loving way. But so those other things are not. I wasn't being a loving son. I wasn't honoring her. And we fought. I mean, yell scream matches in the middle of the living room and dining room. I had to train myself to become obedient to honoring my mother. Now that be slow to anger rule, I'm still trying to become obedient to that. I still struggle with that one. Be quick to listen. I struggle with that one sometimes. I like to talk a lot. I'm still trying to become obedient to those things. Somebody started smiling when I said, I like to talk a lot. Jeez, you guys are mean. I'm admitting my faults and you're laughing at me. But I'm serious. I'm working on those things, becoming obedient to that truth. And it's tough. And we all have those things in Scripture that we not necessarily want to tweak, but we wish we could tweak. So it's a little easier to be obedient. But the truth of it is, as we talked about men's prayer breakfast, this book has been around a really, really long time. So much so that there's more original manuscripts of this book than there is any other document in our history. People have tried to get rid of it and it has continued to remain the same. So we can't tweak it to our design, to our will. It's here and it's here to stay. And so we have to learn to become obedient to that. Make it part of our spiritual workout. Make it part of our Christian life. Because then we get this thing of God's sovereignty and our responsibility and the way they interplay with each other. The way that God is sovereign in our lives. Because if it wasn't for God's sovereignty, this deal of salvation would be gone. Because only God's grace can give us salvation. Can let us have salvation. There's nothing we can do in this world, no matter how obedient, we were just talking about this obedience, no matter how obedient we become, there is nothing that is going to earn us our salvation. And that's the part that is different from our faith and our beliefs than any other faith and belief in the world. They have something in their religion that they are setting out to earn. All we're setting out to do is be an example. Be a light. Because everything else that comes with our faith and our religion is already done. There is nothing we can do to earn it. God's grace starts our salvation. God's grace starts our spiritual journey. Ephesians 2 verse 8 and 9 says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." Notice that even our faith, you're reaching out to God, is something God Himself has brought about. In verse 12, when we started, I want you to catch something here. Paul assumes the Philippians are already saved. Right then in verse 12, he says, "Continue to work out your salvation." You've already obtained it. You've already confessed Jesus as Lord and Savior. God has already given you salvation. That process in which God gives us salvation, there's a word that we use to clarify what that is. It's called justification. Okay? So God's justification on us is not where it is. I went too far, sorry. Because from that justification, then we receive sanctification. What is sanctification? This is where you live out your justification. Simply put, without the big words, because even though those are simple words, they're big and they confuse people. This is where you live out your faith. not to earn salvation, but to show God you appreciate salvation. To show God that you understand He offers you salvation. So if obedience is something I have to do, it makes it sound like I'm earning my salvation. If it's something I have to do. Many of us, and many of you, grew up in denominations where it's kind of the way they lived. You had to do certain things. You had to be a part of certain groups. You had to do things this way or that way to please God. So you ask the question, isn't salvation supposed to be free? God's sovereignty becomes our responsibility. Paul is focusing on sanctification in a large part of this passage. Yet even with that, even with sanctification, even though we're supposed to live out our faith, God still has the central role. Verse 13 says, it is God who gives you the desire and the ability for the good plans and good things for Him. It is never just you. But from our earthly perspective, it seems like an awful lot of it is up to us. I mean, if you sit back and look at it, a lot of what God asks us to do, and a lot of what God sets out for us to do, makes it look like we are earning our sanctification, or our justification. We are earning our salvation. And this becomes confusing for a lot of people because we say it's a done deal. Okay, then why do I have to be good? Why do I have to be obedient? Well, here's the question for you. And I know many of you, mom and dad, probably didn't buy you a car. But if they did, once they bought you the car, does that mean you can just do whatever you wanted because they already bought you the car? Kirk looks at Katrina. Yeah. But you know what I mean? No. They can take the keys. They can put a stop to it. I'm not saying God's going to take your salvation. There's a discipline. There's a process through this all. It's not just us. It's not a me battle we fight. The spiritual workout is a group thing. So should we be afraid? Should we be very afraid? Because we just talked about there's discipline to come. Fear and trembling is a confusing way to describe our walk with God. And He says, do everything without grumbling or arguing. And we're going to get back to that in just a minute. So that you may become blameless, secure children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Has that changed much? Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I'll be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. But even if I'm being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. So I'll go back to verse 12. Knowing that we're supposed to rejoice with God, rejoice with Paul. Continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and act in order to fulfill His good purpose. So as I was writing this sermon, I'm catching verses 12 and 13 right here. Then I read 14 through 18, and I'm like, hang on. We're supposed to do all this, and we're supposed to rejoice, but we're supposed to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. Paul, I'm really confused. Paul's talking about the discipline. When God appeared on Mount Sinai, the people were terrified. And they were right to be, because the holy God could have turned them all to toast. Could have boned them done. I mean, go back to Sodom and Gomorrah. Go back to the flood. All of us need to take God seriously. Right? More seriously than we usually do. God is all about love. God is all about grace. But you don't want to trifle with Him. It doesn't bother me until it's my own kid. I mean, I want to go fix it, and that's not me. So, your kid could be screaming like that, and it wouldn't bother me a bit. But when it's my own, I'm like, "Rrr." Anyway, that whole slow to anger part, remember, we got to work on that. Okay, so, sorry, totally off, my bad. But we come to this point that we understand that God's about love, God's about grace, but we have to understand we don't want to trifle with this God. I don't want to scare you away from God. Okay, understand this. But I know what discipline from God looks like in my life. And I want to be completely blunt with you, it's never been a fun adventure. I have had 2 speeding tickets in my life. One of them, I owned a little turquoise, tealish colored Cavalier. And I was taking my girlfriend home, and I got pulled over in her town for speeding. Got popped with a ticket. Went home, and the whole way home, me and God had this conversation, that my lead foot probably needs to slow down. Okay? And I think this was God's kind of first sign. Hey, just take heed to this and slow down. I kid you not, it was 3 days later. Headed home from Votech. Me and another guy was going to see who got home first, or back to school first. I want you to know a little Cavalier doesn't do 85 down a dirt road very well. I hit a sandstone, smooth rock in the road, hit the ditch, ramped over a 5-wire barbed wire fence, and rolled 4.5 times in the middle of the field. Me and my buddy. And this scar that some of you have asked about on my arm is the worst injury either one of us got. And my little bubble Cavalier looked like a smoothed out, smashed out Camaro. I found out how they designed the Camaro. They took the Cavalier, put it under a press. I went, hey, look. Come on, man. What's fun? Anyway. I think that was God's discipline. He tried to say, hey, Jake, easy. No, God didn't cause me to wreck. But I also know that God could have provided my car a straight path all the way back to the school, no problems. But He didn't. I think part of it was He's got to learn. And then He's put His special little angel on me as I flew through the air and flipped and flopped through that field. But it was God's way of saying, hey, pay attention. Pay attention. And still to this day, I promise you, a couple of you in this church have seen it. You get going too fast down a dirt road, I like that handle that's right there. It still bothers me, and I don't know why to this day. As God's discipline is not meant to hurt us, it's not meant to anger us, it's meant to make us go, hang on, I've been given a gift, and I should appreciate it. I should appreciate it. We teach our kids from a very young age, when they sit down at Christmas, especially with grandparents, they don't see that often, grandparents that may not know very well, they buy them this gift that they think is great for them, they open it up, and they've got 2 of them at home, and you hear the kid go, oh, I already got this. What's the first thing you... Why? Because we want to teach them to be appreciative of the gift, but yet we want to stomp all over the gift that God gives us each and every day. And yet we don't want to suffer consequences. We don't want to have that parent scowl at us when we don't appreciate the gift. So do you practice these spiritual disciplines of salvation in your life? Do you find time each day for prayer and Bible reading? Do you challenge yourself to read spiritual literature? To see how other believers deal with their spiritual life? And you have to deal with the negative side. You have known sins. Learn to deal with them. It may require confession to another person, a plan of action to break its hold on you. But don't let it grow to that point, to where it strangles you spiritually. You have to be the one to stop it. So here's where all this comes together. Here's where the obedience and God's sovereignty comes together. Here's where the rubber meets the road. We'll be cliche for a minute. All of us have areas we need to work on. If you're not willing to admit that you have something in your life you need to work on, I would love to sit and visit with you. Because I will tell you mine, and then I could probably tell you yours. No, but seriously, we all have these areas that we have to find a place to work on. We have to find these key points to challenge us. And we have to understand that there are many other people in this world who have the same experience as us. My mom's printer broke a while back. And she's like, Jay, can you help me? And I'm like, I can do my best over the phone, but without looking at it, knowing exactly what's going on. And so she starts telling me some things, and she's like, then this error message pops up. I'm like, what's the error message say? And she was like, this. I said, well, hang on, let me get to my computer. I sit down at my computer, I go to Google, I type that error message in. She's like, well, I could have done that. I'm like, Mom, do you understand that probably 90 million other people, and it may not be that steep, have had the same exact problem with that same exact printer before? Google it. Somebody out there has went to the internet, found an answer, and they put it out there for you, so you can fix it. Guys, every problem we encounter in life, somebody else has probably had it. No, you probably can't Google the answer to some of them. You probably don't want to Google the answer to some of them. But just know, there are people out there who have fought that fight. And who are willing to love you through it too. But then Paul talks about two great big pitfalls. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. The pitfall of complaining. The Denver International Airport in 2016, they had a staggering 3,349 complaints in the first 9 months. That's an average of 10 complaints a day. You want to know what's funny? 76% of all those complaints were from one person. That's a true story. Big article on it. 76 of those 3,300 complaints were from one person because it was too noisy, too loud, just any complaint he could think of. Guess what? That guy lived 39 miles from the airport. Some people have to find something to complain about. That's life for them. Believers have done it for a very, very long time. The Jews wandering in the wilderness complained because they had no meat to eat. So God gives them meat to eat. You know what they did? God, you're giving us too much. You know what this sounds like? Us with the weather. God, I need it to be a little cooler. God, it's too cold. God, can you warm it up? It's too hot. Would you stop? God, just stop. If you could just make it a nice 75 degrees, maybe spike it to 85 every once in a while so I can go swimming and be comfortable, I'd be great, thanks. But then you've got me on the other side of the fence who's like, hey, could you make it like 40 or 50? And I'll just go sit in a hot tub occasionally. Like, put some snow on the ground every once in a while. And that makes other people mad. But this is life. You think the Denver airport had it bad? Try being God for an hour and listening to the complaints. Do all of you know who Maya Angelou was? She's an African-American poet. And she tells a story of her grandma who ran a general store in Arkansas. And she'd have these habitual complainers come in. As they came in, she would grab Maya, she'd pull her close, and as the person's complaining, she'd make eye contact with Maya a couple times. And then the complainer would leave, and she'd look at Maya and say, did you hear what they complained about? Did you hear it? There are people who went to sleep all over the world, she'd say last night, poor and rich, white, black, and they'll never wake up again. Those who expected to rise did not. And those dead folks would give anything at all, for just 5 minutes of this weather or 10 minutes of plowing that person was grumbling about. And she concluded, what you're supposed to do when you don't like a thing is change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. Don't complain. Don't make a habit of ignoring or forgetting God's goodness. Because I think too many Christians do. Then there's this pitfall of argument. Argument comes from a harsh, critical, or judgmental spirit. It's one thing to constructively disagree, and it's another to belittle people and tear them and their ideas down. I'm part of a couple of Facebook groups. One of them, it's pastors of the Christian church, something or another, and the other one is Independent Christian Church Ministers of Oklahoma. Sorry, I know I don't live in Oklahoma anymore, my bad. Anyway, but I got involved in a couple I thought were heartfelt debates, talking about different things. And then you get one guy who would start to belittle somebody. And me and several other pastors, all at the same time, I'm out. I'm done. We went from, helping each other, strengthening each other, debating this topic, to now somebody's a scumbag. And it's an awful situation. It's like, we're all supposed to be here to strengthen and encourage. But we get this a lot. And it's not just on Facebook. We get this in face-to-face interactions, too. We get this, and sorry, internet warriors are the best at it. And just tearing each other down for no reason. That's what brings about this expedition these girls are going on this weekend right now. Because we're great at belittling each other and arguing over finite things. That's why we're supposed to work our spirit out each and every day. Because that spiritual fitness is what brings a light and produces that light. So that we don't complain and we don't argue with each other, but we find love at the center of all of it. Paul concluded, but even if I'm being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I'm glad and rejoice with all of it. Even if I'm being poured out, emptied out of everything that I am because of you and your service, I'm glad to do it and I rejoice, and I hope that you'll rejoice with me. So that we can hear together, because of the way we work, well done, good and faithful servant. So who's influencing whom? There have been several recent statements on how rotten our political discourse has become. And whether they're right or wrong, whatever you agree with, it's a coarsening of our society right now. And our culture's rotten, and we've all been there. But we can influence it rather than it influencing us. We become that light by holding out the eternal life that God's given us. And that light only comes because we work out in our spirit. That we stress ourselves enough, not stress, that's not the right word, that we exert ourselves enough in our daily life to produce a light because of the spiritualness that God has put within each one of us. Working out gets results. Not working out gets results. That was supposed to be fun. But working out gets results. Having a spiritual workout, having a spiritual discipline in your life. Which, by the way, when we finish Philippians, that's where we're going. For some of you that don't think I plan ahead, we're going to talk about spiritual disciplines. We're going to talk about what it means to work out our spirit. Now, we got 2 chapters of Philippians to go. But what will you see as the fruit of your walk with God? When it's all said and done and you've worked out, you've got the results, you're looking back at your life, you're reflecting, you're going to say, what are the fruits of your walk with God? But here's the part I really want you to think about. Paul says this. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast in the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. I've only been here a year, so I don't want to ask you from my perspective. Let's go to the perspective of the people before me. Jesse, Derek, all the pastors that come before me. what will they see as the fruit of your walk with God? Did they labor in vain? Well, that's an unfair question, Jacob. That makes me feel small. Let's think about any business in the world. I know the church isn't a business, it's a church. Let's think about any person that steps up in leadership in a business. If that business isn't productive and it's not fruitful, they're laboring in vain. And Paul says that he wants to be able to rejoice on that day with God. He wants to be able to boast with Christ. Look, I didn't run or labor in vain. Look what these people have done. You know, that's the cry of my heart one day too. That everywhere I go, I can look back and go, I didn't labor in vain, God. Look what you've done. Look at the way they work out. Look at the way they discipline themselves so that one day we can all together hear, well done, good and faithful servant. If you don't think I'm not stuck on this subject, you can ask any of the men with the men's prayer breakfast. What did we talk about yesterday? Quit being just hearers and become doers. This is something I think we all need a little bit more practice at. Putting one foot in front of the other and learning to work out with God. Learning to discipline ourselves and become more of a spiritual person that is appreciative of the gift God has given us. The hope of eternal life with Him. Pray with me. Father God, we thank you so much for this opportunity to come and be with you today. We thank you that we have this time to praise and worship you. And God, now as we talk about our spiritual workout and becoming obedient and not complaining and not arguing and not grumbling, but just pure obedience to you. Learning to labor in love with you each and every day to produce fruits in our life. Give us the courage it takes to do so. Not just today, not just Monday, not just Tuesday, but Wednesday, Thursday, when the week has begun to wear on us, that we still want to lift you up in praise. It's in Jesus' name.